In today's Procreate art tutorial, I'm going to show you how to paint this watercolor mushroom illustration on your iPad. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial and I'll walk you through every single step. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. For today's video, you're going to need a few supplies, which, as always, are listed in the pinned comment and the description. And there's also a traceable for this video, which you can download below, or you can draw your own drawing. Let's begin. Okay, so today I'm going to use the Amazing Watercolor brush pack, and I'm going to use the 8 by 10 inch paper canvas that comes with that set. I'm going to swipe to the left and duplicate it first. I always like to duplicate the canvas first before using it. And this is so that the original canvas never gets impacted. So I'm going to tap on that, and then we're going to import the traceable. So before we import the traceable, just going to go to the layers panel, and I'm going to tap on the topmost layer, the paper overlay, and then I'm going to import the traceable. That way the traceable will come up right at the top. So then just go to your Actions menu and then tap on Insert a File or Insert a Photo, depending on where you saved the traceable. And the photo has now been imported. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. At this point, you can resize it and move it around depending on where you want it to be. I'm happy where it is. So I'm just going to tap on this, and that is the traceable done. So here is our game plan for today. We are going to start out by painting in the cap of the mushroom, the base color, and then we're going to start to add some fun effects on top of that. And then we're going to paint the stalk, stem, as well as the gills. Then we're going to paint the skirt of this mushroom, and then the leaves at the very end. And then the final details, we're going to do those with some colored pencil effect, because I like to add details with colored pencil. I love the mixed media look, so that's what I'm going to do. But you can definitely use just watercolor brushes for this entire illustration. I have chapters and I have timestamps, so you can skip around if you'd like to. Okay, let's get into it. So let's go to the layers panel and go to the paint here layer. That's where we're going to start painting in the base color for the cap. Now let's zoom in and let's select this color right here. That is the base color that we'll be using. You can pick any color that you like. This is just a guide. It's really up to you which colors you decide to use. So I'm going to go to the brush library. I'm on the Amazing Watercolor brush pack. And I am going to use Dark Outline B. I'm going to show you what that brush looks like right here. So do you see it has a slightly dark outline and it's lighter in the center. And with this brush, as with most of my brushes, if you use light pressure, you're going to get a thin line, heavy pressure, thicker line, and the beauty really is when you vary the pressure. And this takes a little bit of practice, so if you are new and you have a little bit of trouble varying the pressure, that's okay. It will come with practice. When I first did it, it was really hard for me too, but it comes with practice. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to paint this much like you would paint watercolor. So in watercolor, when you want something to remain white, you either paint around it, or then you're going to use something like the white masking fluid. It's like white fluid. What's the white fluid? Masking fluid. And it's not what we're doing today. We're not doing the masking fluid method. We're going to just paint around all of these little elements, and we're not going to stick to the traceable. You can paint fewer spots if you'd like. It's totally up to you. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to use that traceable as a guide, and we are going to just go around all of these elements. And we're not trying to be perfect. They're just there as a guide. And we're trying to lift our pencil as few times as necessary. So that's basically what we're going to do. And if you do happen to lift your pencil and apply more pigment, what you're going to see is that overlap. We're going to smudge any overlaps out, but try to avoid that overlap as much as possible. So if you do have to lift your pencil while you're doing this and you apply more pigment, just go in and be very close to the edges of the original color so there's minimal overlap, and then just paint around those white spots. And take your time, just enjoy the process of painting this. We're not trying to aim for perfection here, but we're just using the traceable underneath as a guide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to watch me paint each one. But if you are following along with me, I would suggest that you just pause the video here and take your time. Don't rush. Come back whenever you want, when you're ready. And see, I'm going to lift my pencil now. And oops, what did I do? Redo. Sometimes that happens. You accidentally undo, just go to the redo button. So I'm going to go around and do that for the rest of the mushroom, and I will meet you back. So I finished painting in the base colors, and I have left some gaps, but we do see some overlap. So we need to smudge that out now. And what I'm going to do first is go to the layers panel and turn off the traceable, just so we can see things a little bit more clearly. And we're going to go to the smudge tool right here. That's our smudge library. And go to Smudger A. And go with the smallest preset size, which is size 5. I always like to go with the smaller size. And just gently smudge out any of these overlaps. And you don't need to completely remove the overlaps. You can leave a little bit of it just to add some color variation to this. But be careful when you are smudging to avoid any of these white spots. Because if you smudge like this, you're going to remove that hard edge of that white spot, and I don't want that. So when you're close to those white edges, you may want to reduce the size of your smudger just a notch. But again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, so I've removed the overlaps, but you can still see a little bit of those overlaps, and that's okay because I feel it adds a little bit to that watercolor effect. So now what we want to do is add on some more fun effects to this base layer. And if you watched any of my previous videos, you'll know I like to do that with a clipping mask. So let's go to the layers panel, tap on plus, and let's tap on this layer again and make it a clipping mask. So now, basically, anything that I do in this layer will only show up on this shape underneath. So this is a really great way to add some effects to a shape without having those effects go everywhere on your screen. I love to use a clipping mask for that. And you will understand more about what the clipping mask does as we move through this video. So what I want to do is add some color variation. And I'm going to go in with a slightly darker color. So I'm going to go to the color menu, and I'm going to make this color more saturated and a bit darker. Totally up to you which color you want. You could actually even use a different hue. So it's up to you. And what we're going to do is we are going to go to Hard Edge Overlay A, this brush, and let's test it out. So we're seeing that there is a slight color variation here, but it's not very intense. So what you can do, there's two things you can do here. You can either go back to your color menu and make this color even darker and then try it again. I think that's a bit muddy now. I don't like that color. So I'm going to go back to that color I had originally. Go up. So the reason why you're not seeing that color much here is because this initial base layer that we have here is transparent. When you try to add a clipping mask to a transparent layer, you're not going to see much of it. So the workaround for this, I will tell you what that is to basically make this layer a little less transparent without losing its effect. So what you can do for that is to go to that layer that you have where we did the base layer of the mushroom, swipe to the left, duplicate it. Now it's become a bit too dark. That's not our intent. What we're going to do now is go to the layer underneath and let's make it white. So go into Hue, Saturation, and Brightness. Increase your brightness all the way to max. And now what you've done is you've made this layer white, and then you have another layer here, And what we want to do is merge them. So basically what we're doing is we are making this layer a bit less transparent. And when that happens, anything you add to a clipping mask, you'll be able to see it better. So you see here, we have this effect and you hardly see it. It's not very visible. Now keep watching this area. We're going to merge these two layers. Do you see how that's much more intense? So whenever you are painting with watercolor, whether it's my brushes or someone else's brushes, they tend to be transparent. And when you try to add a clipping mask to a transparent layer, you can run into some issues. So this is the technique. Duplicate that base layer, make it white, merge it. That way you're making that base layer less transparent. And then any effect that you have on top will show up much more intense. All right, so now let's just go back to this layer here and let's I'm going to restart this. I'm going to erase that 3-finger swipe. Okay, so now we're ready to add our pigment. So we had that hard edge overlay brush. We had a darker shade of this base color. And now with this brush, apply light pressure and then heavy pressure. And then while your pencil's still on the screen, lighten the pressure a little bit and you'll be able to remove some of the pigment. So let me show you this in a different layer. You don't need to do this. So with heavy pressure, this brush looks like that. Light pressure, it looks like that. The beauty, apply heavy pressure and then while your pencil's still on the screen, reduce your pressure and you can get that sort of a variation. So now let's go back to this layer and let's add color variation wherever you feel like it. And you can also go in with a different hue. So I'm going to go into the color menu and I'm going to move the hue towards orange, very saturated orange. Let's see what that looks like. Yes. So I'm going to add a little bit of orangey, yellowy orange at the top. So at this point, feel free to add pigment wherever you want to add pigment. Totally up to you. And now I want to add a little bit more variation. I'm going to go into the layers panel, tap on plus, make it a clipping mask. And what I want to do is I want to use a different brush for this. I'm going to use Grainy Pigment Overlay B. And I'm going to go with quite a dark color, dark red. Let's see. Maybe a tad darker. And with this brush at its maximum size, I'm just going to, in certain areas, tap. I don't know if you can see this on camera. Do you see? We get that sort of effect. I actually want this to be a bit more intense. So I'm going to go even darker. Sometimes you got to test the color. Yes, that's getting close to what I want. So sometimes just keep changing the color until you get something you like. And you can even change the size of this brush and experiment until you get something that you like. So I'm just going to tap to add some interesting texture here and there. So do you see? I've got a little bit of grainy pigment. So what I would suggest is keep adding pigment until you get something that you like. I'm also going to add a little bit more darkness towards the bottom of this cap. So I'm going to do this in a different layer. I'm going to make that a clipping mask as well. All of these layers are clipping masks that clip to that base layer. And I'm going to go in to the Pigment Bleed Overlay brush. I'm just going to add a little hint of darkness towards the bottom of this cap. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to stop. You can definitely add more variation if you'd like. You can even add a hint of black somewhere if you'd like. So it's totally up to you. You can keep adding more pigment until you get something that you like. All right, so now the cap is done. We're going to come back to the cap towards the end of the video to do some of the interesting details. But for now, the cap is done. Okay, so now it's time for us to move on to the stem or the stalk, as well as the gills, I think that's what they're called. So we're going to go back to the layers panel and we're going to bring back that traceable because we need to see what we're doing. And I'm going to tap on plus and create another layer. This is not a clipping mask layer, this is just a standard layer. And we're going to color in this area as well as this area. And for that, we're going to pick this color right here. And for this one, I am going to use the simple watercolor pigmented brush. Okay, so now just zoom in, make sure that you're on the correct layer. I can't tell you how many times I'm on the wrong layer. And just try to paint in, without lifting your pencil, the gills. And then the stem. Okay, now we're going to go to the layers panel and we're going to add our font effects. So we're going to tap on plus, make it a clipping mask. It's very much how we painted that cap. And what we're going to do is going to select this color. Well, we already had it selected. And we're going to go down at a diagonal so we get a slightly different shade, darker shade. And then I'm going to go to the pigment bleed overlay brush. And what I'm going to do is just, with a smaller size, just tap here. Actually, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to turn off this traceable. There we go. And just at the very top of this shape, just going to add some pigment. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Just add some pigment. And I'm going to go to the smudge tool. Oops. Smudger A, and just smudge some of this out so it's a bit softer. So that's our first layer of pigment. Now I want to add some more pigment. I'm going to do this with a different brush. So I'm going to do this in a different layer. Again, clipping mask. And I'm going to go in to the grainy pigment overlay brush. And what I want to do is add a touch of graininess to this side. So I'm just going to tap, tap, and tap. There we go. That looks nice. And if you want to add a little bit more here, you can do that too, but I'm going to leave this relatively simple. But what I do want to do is add a little bit more darkness right here. The reason for this is in the original traceable, you see there's a skirt here. We would generally see a little bit of a shadow under the skirt because the light can't get to it. So I do want this area to be a bit darker. So what I'm going to do is zoom in and I'm going to go in with either the pigment overlay brush, pigment bleed overlay brush, or the hard edge overlay A. Let's go in with that one maybe. And slightly darker. Let's experiment. Sometimes you have to experiment to see what color works. Maybe a bit darker. And then with heavy pressure, I'm going to add a little bit of pigment and then I'm going to reduce the pressure slightly. And create sort of a dark shadow underneath. Okay, I am happy with that. Now we can move on to painting the skirt. I'm going to do it in this color right here. Same color, but we will add on effects. So let's do this in a different layer. Make sure you have a fresh layer. And then we're going to select the simple watercolor pigmented brush. And we're just going to paint in this area. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off that traceable and we're going to add some effects here. So go into the layers panel, tap on plus, make it a clipping mask. It's the same process throughout this video. And I'm going to select the pigment bleed overlay brush. And I'm going to select a color that's a bit more saturated and a bit more, it's a bit darker. And I'm going to add a little bit of pigment here. Let's see. Okay, I like that. And maybe a little bit darker right underneath here. And then I'm also going to add some pigment with this grainy brush, like that. Okay. And I may consider smudging some of this out. Now, I'm not going to add too much detail here because we are going to use a color pencil later on to actually do some of the details. So I think this looks fine. We'll come back later and add darker lines with a colored pencil. So for now, this is good. Now I'm going to move on to the leaves, and then we'll come back and do the details. Okay, so let's go to the layers panel, tap on plus, and let's bring back our traceable. So these are the leaves that we're going to paint in. So let's select this color right here for the leaves. And then I'm going to go to, let's see, where was that brush that I wanted to use? Yes, Dual Color Magic. So this brush is a dual color brush, which means you get to select 2 colors of your choice, and you will get a little bit of each color depending on how much pressure you apply. So let's go to the color menu, and we have 2 colors here already. Pick any 2 colors that you like, ideally colors that are slightly different. And let me show you how this works. Actually, if you've never used a dual color brush, let me just tell you how you select 2 colors. So the first color, you can just move around and select the color. For the second color, just tap on it and then move it around to select your second color. And depending on how the brush is, each brush is slightly different. Sometimes you'll see more of the first color with heavy pressure. Sometimes you'll see more of the second color with heavy pressure. So I think with this brush, let's just test it out. So I'm using light pressure. I'm seeing more of this color. Heavy pressure, I'm seeing more of the second color. So depending on how you want it, you may want to switch the colors. So just to switch the colors, just tap and it will switch it. So now with light pressure, I'm seeing this color, and with heavy pressure, I'm seeing the other one. I don't think it really matters, but just pick 2 colors that you like and make sure that you're on a separate layer. And we are going to go in and color in these leaves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start here. And with light pressure, I'm going to fill in the shape without lifting the pencil. And then apply slightly heavy pressure. So do you see we have a little bit of color variation? Now this is very slight color variation. If you want it to be more intense, just go back to that layers panel and change up the colors a little bit more. And you'll see much more color variation. So light pressure, I'm seeing much more of that yellowy green. And with heavy pressure, I'm seeing more of that other color. Now, I would suggest, because these leaves are small, let's go in with a smaller size for this brush. And just each leaf, fill it in. Start with light pressure, and then towards the bottom, just going to add a bit more pressure. And do you see what happens? We're getting that kind of effect. You will have more control at a smaller size, just so you keep that in mind, especially when you're painting something so small. So not lifting my pencil, and then adding much more intensity at the bottom. So I'm seeing more of that green. So I'm just going to go around and paint all of these leaves. And now I'm going to paint in the stem. I want the stem of these leaves to be a darker shade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the dual color detail brush, and I'm going to grab this color right here, go in darker, and then for the second color, very close to black. That way there's a lot more contrast so you can really see the stems. So I need to know what I'm painting. So I'm going to go back to the inserted image. And now in a different layer, just in case I want to change things, I'm doing this in a different layer. I'm just going to paint in the stems. So let's start here. Actually, I'm going to do it this way so it's easier. Start from the bottom, heavy pressure. And I'm going to lighten the pressure as I move into each leaf. This is a pressure sensitive brush, so if you use heavy pressure, your line looks like that, light pressure like that, and heavy, light. You can create quite an interesting look. And if you need more control, just go a little bit smaller. Okay, now it's time to do the details. So let's go back to the layers panel, tap on that traceable, that inserted image, and keep it there as a reference. And then tap on plus again, and we are now in a fresh layer. We're going to do all of our details in this layer. And we are going to do all the details with this brush right here, Rough Sketch. You could use a taper sketch, you could use another pencil set that you have. I also have pencils here, but I'm going to use what comes with the set, which is the Rough Sketch brush. So let me just show you how this Rough Sketch brush works. So depending on how much pressure you apply, you'll get a different result. So when you apply high pressure, you're going to get something that's not as textured. The texture will remain on the edges, but not in the center, and you'll get something that's thicker. If you use light pressure, you get more of that pencil-y, sketchy look. Heavy pressure looks like that. So very much pressure sensitive. So I would suggest vary the pressure so you can get a variety of different looks. So the first thing I want to do is start to add some of these details here in the gills. So what I'm going to do is select this color right here, go into the colors panel, and then go down at a diagonal. That way I'm getting a darker and more saturated shade. And let's just see if I like that color. I think that looks good. So I'm going to reduce the brush size just a bit, and I'm going to sketch in these details. And you can use the traceable as a guide, or you can sketch in your own lines as well. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the skirt here. I'm going to go in and add some details. And I also want to add some details along the edges of the cap. So for that, I'm not going to use this color. I'm actually going to use one of the colors from here. Just go in and again, make it a bit darker. I'm going to make it a little bit more saturated. Yeah, there. And one thing to keep in mind with this pencil is if you tilt it, you'll see something like that. That's with a tilt. This is without a tilt. So you can also tilt the pencil and add some interesting texture wherever you'd like. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go around and do that. I'm going to go and turn off that traceable and just see if I want to make a few more changes, add a few more details. So I'm going to go into hue, saturation, and brightness, and maybe reduce the saturation of some of these lines. I feel like they're a bit too saturated, so I think that's nicer. Yes. And I can add a little bit more along the cap just to make it pop a bit more. Okay, I'm happy with the mushroom, but I do want to add a little bit more to the leaves. So I'm going to pick this color here and go in at a diagonal so it's a bit darker, the color. And same thing, I'm going to just add some details here and there just to make things pop a little bit more. I want to add a little bit more visual interest to the leaves, so I'm going to add some white spots to them. So I'm going to go to the layers panel and double tap at the 10 o'clock position. That way it snaps to pure white. And then just zoom in, just add some white spots. Totally not necessary, but I love to do this. I don't know why. So this is just one of those things that's more of a stylistic choice, not very realistic. So yes, some white spots, and you can also add some white spots here as well if you'd like. Totally up to you. The gills here, I feel like I need a line here because I feel like right now this color and the background are very similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this color here, but I don't want it to be as intense. So I'm going to go a little bit lighter and just... I could keep going, but at some point you have to say, I'm done, and I feel like I'm done. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!